The anomaly appeared on Aurora Vale's scanner as a faint biological signature, pulsing erratically against the barren landscape of Moon W17. She adjusted her environment suit's thermal display, squinting through the pale viridian sunlight that filtered weakly through the moon's thin atmosphere. Something large was bleeding out approximately 2 kilometers east of her current position. Omega Station, this is Aurora. I'm picking up an anomalous life sign. Request permission to investigate, she said, already gathering her field kit. The communication crackled with interference from the moon's unusual magnetic fields. Negative. Aurora. Your designated research quadrant is westward today. We have military exercises scheduled in the eastern sector. The voice of Commander Bryce was firm, but Aurora had already begun moving toward the anomaly. This signature doesn't match any documented native species in our database. It could be a new discovery. She paused, watching the life sign flicker. And whatever it is, it's dying. Dr. Vale, I remind you that you are not authorized to... Aurora switched off her communication link. 6 months after the Great Alliance War, bureaucracy still dictated scientific exploration with ironclad regulations. But Aurora hadn't come to this unnamed moon at the edge of the Viridian star system to follow rules. She had come to understand life in all its forms. The galactic innovation era had opened up thousands of new worlds for exploration after humanity had finally achieved peace with the other sentient species that formed the Alliance. But the peace was tenuous at best, especially with the more aggressive species that occupied the outer sectors. Species like the apex predators, whose legion had been the most formidable enemy during the war. The signal led Aurora to a shallow ravine cut into the moon's crust by ancient water flows. The atmosphere here was denser, filled with a mist that glowed faintly, phosphorescent in the dim light. Her scanner directed her to a massive form partially concealed beneath a fallen rock formation. What she saw made her breath catch. It was an apex predator, nearly 3 meters tall even in its crumpled position. Its exoskeletal armor gleamed with an iridescent black sheen, despite being cracked in several places. Dark, viscous fluid seeped from multiple wounds, particularly from a massive gash across its thoracic segment. Aurora should have retreated immediately. Contact with apex predators was strictly forbidden by Alliance regulations, especially for civilians. The war might be over, but the Apex Legion operated under its own mysterious code, permitted to conduct hunting exercises in certain neutral territories as part of the uneasy peace agreement. But the scientist in Aurora saw only a complex organism in distress. The human in her saw a living being in pain. She approached cautiously, her scanner confirming what her eyes told her. This predator was moments from death. Its breathing was labored, the complex respiratory system visible through translucent sections of its exoskeleton, struggling to maintain oxygenation. The predator's compound eyes suddenly fixed on her, multifaceted orbs reflecting her own image, back in hundreds of tiny duplicates. A low, resonant sound vibrated from somewhere within its thorax. Not quite a growl, not quite speech. Aurora raised her empty hands slowly. "I'm a doctor," she said simply. "I can help you." The predator made no move to attack or retreat. Perhaps it was too weak, or perhaps it understood. Aurora could never be sure afterward. But its mandibles clicked once, and its massive head tilted slightly, in what she chose to interpret as permission. Working quickly, Aurora assessed the damage. The primary wound appeared to have been caused by something with tremendous force, likely the fallen rock formation beside the creature. But there were other, more precise cuts that suggested this predator had been engaged in combat with another formidable opponent before the rockfall. Her field kit contained advanced medical technology, but it had been designed for treating humans or similar carbon-based life forms. The apex biology was fundamentally different. Silicon-based, with copper-rich fluids instead of iron-based blood. Still, the principles of trauma care remain similar. Stop the bleeding, stabilize the vital systems, support tissue regeneration. Aurora synthesized a silicon-compatible sealant for the major wounds and carefully applied regenerative nanobots recalibrated for the predator's unique biochemistry. She worked for hours, losing track of time as she fought to stabilize the massive being, using every trick and technique she had learned during her years of xenobiology training. The sun was setting when the predator's vital signs finally stabilized. Its breathing had evened out, and the bleeding had stopped. Aurora sat back on her heels, exhausted but satisfied. The creature would live, though full recovery would take time. As if sensing her thoughts, the predator's eyes focused on her again. One massive clawed appendage moved slowly, not toward her, but toward a complex device attached to its armor. With evident effort, it detached the device and placed it on the ground between them. Aurora recognized it as a communication module, similar to those used by Alliance diplomats during the peace negotiations. The predator pressed a sequence of glyphs, and a holographic display flickered to life. "You saved Tralanx," came a deep, resonant voice, translated through the device. "First Claw of Apex Legion." Aurora nodded cautiously. "You were injured. I'm a doctor, a healer." The predator, Tralanx, studied her for a long moment. "Small one, asks nothing. For life debt?" "No," Aurora replied simply. "That's not why I helped you." Something shifted in the predator's compound eyes, a subtle change that Aurora couldn't interpret. "The Legion remembers," Tralanx said finally. The communication device powered down, and the predator settled back, its massive form relaxing into what Aurora assumed was a healing rest state. Aurora gathered her equipment, leaving behind additional supplies that might aid in the predator's recovery. She knew she should report the encounter, but something held her back. The peace between humans and apex predators was fragile, and any unauthorized contact could be misinterpreted. As she prepared to return to her research station, Aurora glanced back at the resting form of Tralanx, First Claw of the Apex Legion. She couldn't know then how significantly this encounter would alter the course of her life, and perhaps the future of interspecies relations in the Alliance. "Rest well, Tralanx," she said quietly, and began the long trek back to Omega-17. The reprimand came swiftly and severely. Aurora stood at attention in Commander Bryce's office, facing not only her immediate superior, but also a stern-faced Alliance official who had arrived via emergency transport the moment Aurora's breach of protocol had been discovered. "Do you understand the gravity of your actions, Dr. Vale?" The Alliance official, Colonel Celine Rogan, asked. Her voice was perfectly modulated, betraying neither anger nor sympathy. "You deliberately disobeyed direct orders, disabled your communication link, and made unauthorized contact with an apex predator." "I understand the regulations, Colonel," Aurora replied, keeping her voice steady. "But I also understood that a sentient being was dying, and I had the means to prevent that death." Commander Bryce leaned forward, his weathered face creased with concern. "Aurora, the Apex Legion isn't like us. They operate under different codes, different values. What you perceive as a humanitarian act might be interpreted entirely differently in their culture." "Their culture values strength," Colonel Rogan added. "By demonstrating your medical prowess, you may have inadvertently issued some form of challenge or established a hierarchy they won't recognize." Aurora shook her head. "With respect, Colonel, I don't believe that's the case. The predator, Tralanx, identified himself as First Claw of the Legion. He seemed to understand perfectly well that I was providing medical assistance, and he accepted that assistance without hostility." "He communicated with you." Rogan's perfectly composed facade cracked slightly, revealing genuine surprise. "Yes, through a translation device. He mentioned something about a life debt, But when I asked for nothing in return, he simply said, "The Legion remembers." Colonel Rogan and Commander Bryce exchanged a significant look. "A life debt," Rogan muttered. "This complicates matters." Aurora frowned. "I don't understand. What does that mean?" Commander Bryce sighed heavily. "It means, Dr. Vale, that you've inadvertently entangled yourself in one of the most sacred aspects of Apex culture. Their entire social structure is built around a complex system of debts and obligations. By saving his life and asking nothing in return," Colonel Rogan continued, "you've placed the first claw of the Apex Legion in an uncomfortable position within their hierarchy. Their culture demands balance in all things. A debt unpaid is considered destabilizing." "So what happens now?" Aurora asked. "We monitor the situation," Rogan replied. "We increase security protocols at Omega-17, and you, Dr. Vale, will remain strictly within the boundaries of the research station until further notice." Aurora wanted to protest, but the gravity in both her superior's expressions stopped her. "I understand," she said instead. "Your research will continue," Commander Bryce added, his tone softening slightly. "But, under supervision, you've demonstrated remarkable insight into Apex biology that might prove valuable to the Alliance. Dr. Elena Marsh from Xenobiology will be collaborating with you moving forward." Aurora nodded, recognizing the compromise for what it was: half punishment, half opportunity. "Thank you, Commander." As she was dismissed, Aurora couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had been set in motion, something neither she nor the Alliance fully understood. The next 3 months passed in a blur of research and restriction. Aurora found herself simultaneously advancing her understanding of W-17's complex ecosystem while chafing under the constant surveillance. Dr. Elena Marsh proved to be both a brilliant colleague and a welcome friend in the isolated research station, never treating Aurora with the suspicion or distance that many other staff members had adopted since the incident. "Your analysis of the adaptive properties in the lunar lichen is fascinating," Elena said one evening as they reviewed data in the station's common area. "The way it incorporates silicon into its structure might explain how the native fauna can process the unusual mineral composition of the moon." Aurora nodded, but her attention had drifted to the viewport that offered a view of the eastern horizon, the direction where she had encountered Tralanx. In the months since, there had been no sign of Apex activity in the sector. She wondered if the Predator had recovered, if he had rejoined his Legion, if he remembered the human who had tended his wounds. "You're thinking about him again, aren't you?" Elena asked quietly. Aurora turned, offering a small smile. "Am I that transparent?" "Only to someone who's been watching you stare at that horizon for 3 months," Elena replied with a gentle laugh. "I've read the reports. You know. What you did was brave. Aurora, foolish, perhaps, but brave." "It wasn't bravery," Aurora insisted. "It was just the right thing to do." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. Red emergency lights began pulsing throughout the station, and Commander Bryce's voice came over the communication system. "All personnel, report to emergency stations immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." Aurora and Elena exchanged alarmed glances before rushing to the command center. They arrived to find organized chaos, staff members hurrying to their designated positions while security personnel distributed weapons and emergency equipment. Commander Bryce stood at the central console, his face grim as he conversed with Colonel Rogan via holographic communication. He looked up as Aurora and Elena entered. "Dr. Vale," he said, his voice tight. "It seems your Apex friend has returned, and he's not alone." Aurora moved to the monitoring station, where tactical displays showed multiple vessels approaching the moon. The ships were unlike any Alliance design, angular, predatory shapes that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "Apex Legion vessels," Colonel Rogan confirmed from her holographic projection. A full battle group, including what appears to be their command ship. Are they attacking? Aurora asked, her heart racing. No, Commander Bryce replied. They've established a holding pattern at the edge of our defensive perimeter and sent a single communication. What did they say? Elena asked. Colonel Rogan's holographic form straightened. They've requested, no, demanded, the presence of the life-giver Aurora Vale at the space gate. They cited something called the right of lifebound, and have stated that no hostilities will commence if you present yourself voluntarily. All eyes in the command center turned to Aurora. That's not happening, Commander Bryce said firmly. We don't surrender our people to potential hostiles, regardless of circumstances. I agree, Colonel Rogan said. We have no way of knowing their true intentions, regardless of their assurances. Aurora moved closer to the tactical display, studying the arrangement of the Apex vessels. They had positioned themselves in a formation that was clearly defensive, rather than offensive, protecting the command ship, rather than preparing for an attack. I don't think they mean harm, she said slowly. If they wanted to attack, they could have done so without warning. The fact that they've announced themselves and made a specific request suggests something else. Something else like what? Commander Bryce demanded. I don't know, Aurora admitted. But I saved Treylanx's life. He mentioned a life debt. This must be related to that. Absolutely not, a new voice cut in. A tall, imposing man in an Alliance military uniform strode into the command center. The Apex Legion cannot be trusted. They're predators, not diplomats. Colonel Rogan's holographic form nodded in acknowledgement. Captain Marcus Kiln, Alliance Special Tactical Division. I've requested his presence given the delicate nature of this situation. Captain Kiln's hard gaze settled on Aurora. Dr. Vale, I've reviewed your file and the incident report. While your intentions may have been admirable, you've created a dangerous situation. The Apex don't understand concepts like mercy or compassion. They interpret everything through the lens of power and domination. Aurora bristled at his dismissive tone. With respect, Captain, you weren't there. Treylanx understood exactly what I was doing, and he accepted my help without aggression. There was recognition between us, sentient to sentient. Naive sentimentality, Kiln replied coldly. I fought against the Apex Legion during the war. I've seen what they're capable of. Whatever this right of lifebound is, it's not worth risking your life to discover. Before Aurora could respond, the communication console chimed. Incoming transmission from the Apex command vessel, the communications officer announced. Put it through, Commander Bryce ordered after a moment's hesitation. The central holographic projector flickered, and then a massive figure appeared, Treylanx, first claw of the Apex Legion. He stood tall and straight, his exoskeletal armor gleaming with ceremonial markings that hadn't been present during their first encounter. The wounds that had nearly killed him were now merely faint lines across his thoracic plating. His compound eyes seemed to search the room until they fixed on Aurora. Life-giver Aurora Vale, he said, his voice resonating even through the communication system. The Legion has come to fulfill the debt of existence. I, Treylanx, First Claw, stand ready to acknowledge the life bond according to the ancient ways. Captain Kiln stepped forward. This is Captain Marcus Kiln of the Alliance military. State your intentions clearly, Apex, or we will consider your presence an act of aggression. Treylanx's attention shifted briefly to Kiln, multifaceted eyes, reflecting the captain's image. The small, aggressive one does not understand. This is not a matter for your military. It is a matter of honor between the lifebound. Explain this life bond. Colonel Rogan interjected diplomatically. What exactly are you proposing? Treylanx's mandibles clicked thoughtfully before he responded. When one grants life without condition, the receiver becomes lifebound by sacred honor. The life-giver holds the debt of existence until it is claimed or released. I have come with my legion to acknowledge this bond formally, and to offer the traditional service as is our way. Aurora stepped forward, ignoring Captain Kiln's warning gesture. What service? Trailanx. The massive predator's posture shifted subtly, a movement Aurora interpreted as something akin to respect. The life-bound serves the life-giver until the debt is balanced. My legion awaits your command. Aurora Vale. A stunned silence fell over the command center. Are you saying, Aurora began carefully, that you and your legion are offering to serve me because I saved your life? It is our way, Trailanx confirmed. A life, freely given, creates a bond that must be honored. You asked nothing when you could have demanded everything. Such nobility must be acknowledged. Captain Kiln scoffed. This is absurd. The Apex Legion doesn't serve anyone, especially not humans. Trailanx's attention remained fixed on Aurora. The choice is yours, Life-Giver. Accept the formal acknowledgement of the life bond, and the First Claw Legion stands ready at your command. Reject it, and the imbalance remains, a dishonor that cannot be borne. Aurora could feel the weight of everyone's gaze upon her. This was uncharted territory in human Apex relations. Whatever she decided would have far-reaching implications. I need time to consider this, she said finally. This is not a decision to be made hastily. Trailanx inclined his massive head. The Legion will maintain position for 3 cycles of your sun. We await your decision. Life-Giver, Aurora Vale. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Well, Colonel Rogan said after a moment, this is an unexpected development. Captain Kiln turned to face Aurora, his expression thunderous. You realize what's happening here, don't you? They're using this life bond nonsense as a pretext to establish a presence in Alliance territory. It's a tactical maneuver, nothing more. I disagree, Aurora replied firmly. There was no deception in Trailanx's manner. This is genuinely important to them, a matter of honor and tradition. Dr. Vale may be right, Colonel Rogan said thoughtfully. Our xenocultural experts have long theorized that the Apex social structure involves complex obligation rituals, but we've never had the opportunity to observe them directly. This could provide valuable insight. Or it could be a trap, Kiln countered. We should reject this overture and demand they withdraw immediately. Commander Bryce, who had been quietly observing the exchange, finally spoke. It seems to me that we have an opportunity here, one that requires careful consideration rather than hasty rejection. He turned to Aurora. Dr. Vale, you have 3 days to prepare your response. In the meantime, I suggest you work with Dr. Marsh and our cultural specialist to better understand the implications of this life bond. Aurora nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. Thank you, Commander. As the meeting dispersed, Captain Kiln caught up with Aurora in the corridor. This isn't a game, Doctor, he said, his voice low and intense. You're dealing with predators who evolved to hunt and kill. Whatever cultural veneer they've developed doesn't change their fundamental nature. Aurora met his gaze steadily. With respect, Captain, perhaps it's time we looked beyond fundamental nature and recognized the complexity of sentient beings. All sentient beings. Kiln's jaw tightened. Your idealism is dangerous, Dr. Vale. I'll be watching this situation closely. He strode away, leaving Aurora with the distinct impression that she had made a powerful enemy. The next 3 days were the most intense of Aurora's life. She divided her time between studying what little the Alliance knew about Apex culture, consulting with Dr. Elena Marsh about the biological implications of the life bond, and engaging in heated debates with Alliance officials about the potential diplomatic consequences of her decision. The life bond appears to be a fundamental aspect of Apex social structure, Elena explained as they reviewed the limited xenocultural data available. It's mentioned in several intercepted communications from during the war, always with reverence. From what we can piece together, their entire hierarchy is built around these bonds of obligation and service. Aurora nodded, studying the holographic display of Apex social networks that Elena had constructed based on intelligence reports. So, when I saved Tralanx without demanding anything in return, I effectively created an unbalanced bond, a situation their culture can't easily accommodate. Exactly, Elena confirmed. And given Tralanx's status as First Claw, essentially the field commander of their most elite legion, this imbalance would be particularly significant. His inability to repay the debt might be seen as a weakness within their hierarchy. So his offer of service isn't just personal. It's necessary for him to maintain his standing among his own kind. Aurora mused. That's my theory, Elena agreed. By formally acknowledging the life bond and offering the service of his legion, he's not only honoring his personal debt to you, but also transforming what might be seen as a vulnerability into a demonstration of their cultural values. Aurora leaned back, considering the implications. And if I reject the offer? Elena's expression grew serious. That's harder to predict. It might be interpreted as a profound insult, a suggestion that his life wasn't valuable enough to create a meaningful bond. Or it might leave him in an untenable position within Apex society, unable to balance the debt. Their discussion was interrupted by a priority communication alert. Commander Bryce appeared on the holographic projector, his expression grave. Dr. Vale, Dr. Marsh, your presence is required in the command center immediately. We have a developing situation. When they arrived, they found the command center buzzing with activity. Captain Kiln stood at the central console with Colonel Rogan, both studying a complex three-dimensional display of the Viridian star system. What's happening? Aurora asked. Commander Bryce gestured toward the display. Our long-range sensors have detected a void storm crystal on a collision course with Groundhold, one of our primary colony worlds in this sector. Aurora felt her blood run cold. Void storm crystals were among the most feared phenomena in known space. Massive crystalline structures that absorbed energy from the void between stars, becoming almost invisible to conventional detection methods until they were dangerously close. Their impact could devastate an entire planet. How much time do we have? She asked. The crystal will reach Groundhold in approximately 72 hours. Colonel Rogan replied. We've already issued evacuation orders, but Groundhold has a population of over 3 million. Even with all available transport, we can't evacuate more than a third of the population in time. Can we destroy it? Elena asked. Captain Kiln shook his head. Void storm crystals absorb energy weapons. Conventional explosives might fragment it, but that would just create multiple impact events instead of one. What about diversion? Aurora suggested. If we can't destroy it, perhaps we can alter its trajectory. We've run the calculations, Commander Bryce said grimly. To achieve sufficient deflection would require more propulsion power than the entire Alliance fleet in this sector could generate. A heavy silence fell over the command center as the implications sank in. Millions of lives, men, women, children, would be lost. The Groundhold colony, one of humanity's most successful settlements in the outer sectors, would be wiped from existence. Aurora found her gaze drawn to the viewport, where the distant shapes of the Apex vessels still maintained their vigilant formation. An idea began to form, desperate, perhaps even foolish, but possibly their only hope. The Apex Legion, she said quietly. All eyes turned to her. Their ships, Aurora continued, more confidently now. Their technology is different from ours, evolved from different principles. Their propulsion systems generate significantly more power than Alliance vessels of comparable size. Captain Kiln's expression darkened. You can't be serious. You want to ask the Apex Legion to intervene? They have no stake in this. Groundhold is a human colony. They offered their service, Aurora countered. This is exactly the kind of situation where that service could make a difference. It's against Alliance protocol, Kiln argued. Military cooperation with the Apex Legion must be approved by the full council, not arranged through some personal, life bond that we barely understand. Colonel Rogan held up a hand, silencing further debate. Dr. Vale may have a point. If the Apex vessels could be utilized, what would be the tactical approach? Aurora turned to the display, studying the crystal's trajectory. If enough ships positioned themselves at these coordinates and applied sustained propulsion at maximum output, the resulting gravitational distortion might be sufficient to alter the crystal's path enough to miss groundhold. Commander Bryce nodded slowly. The mathematics are sound, but it would require precise coordination and timing. One miscalculation, and the crystal could be pushed into an even more destructive path. And we'd be placing ourselves at the mercy of the Apex Legion, Captain Kiln added darkly, giving them direct access to one of our most vulnerable colonies. Aurora met his gaze steadily. Sometimes, survival requires trust, Captain. Besides, this would be a perfect opportunity to test the sincerity of Tralanx's offer. Colonel Rogan studied Aurora for a long moment, then nodded decisively. Contact the Apex Command Vessel. Commander Bryce. Let's hear what the First Claw has to say about this proposition. Tralanx's response was immediate and unexpected. His massive form appeared in the holographic projector, compound eyes fixed on Aurora with what she was beginning to recognize as intensity. The Legion stands ready. Life-giver, he said without preamble. Our sensors detected the Void Path shard approaching your colony. We awaited your command. Aurora blinked in surprise. You already knew about the crystal? We are hunters, Tralanx replied simply. We track all threats within our territory. Groundhold isn't your territory, Captain Kiln interjected sharply. Tralanx's attention shifted briefly to the captain, mandibles clicking in what Aurora interpreted as dismissal. The Life-Giver's concerns are the Legion's concerns. The bond extends to all under her protection. Aurora stepped forward, focusing the conversation. Can your ships intercept and divert the crystal? Tralanx. It would require precise coordination and significant power output. The Legion excels at the hunt, Tralanx confirmed. We have encountered such shards before. They are formidable prey, but not beyond our capabilities. Hope surged through Aurora, but Colonel Rogan raised a cautionary hand. There's a complication. Alliance regulations prohibit unauthorized military operations by non-alliance forces within our sovereign territory. The Council would need to approve any intervention by the Apex Legion, and there simply isn't time for that approval process. Tralanx's massive head tilted slightly. Your Council does not command the Legion. The Life Bond does. That's precisely the problem, Captain Kiln said. We can't allow military operations in Alliance space based on some personal arrangement between Dr. Vale and your Legion. Aurora could see the situation deteriorating. Captain Kiln's rigid adherence to protocol was understandable. The Alliance had been built on careful rules and boundaries, but those same rules might now condemn millions to death. A sudden clarity came over her. The life bond was real to Tralanx and his Legion, a sacred obligation that transcended political boundaries. And perhaps, just perhaps, it offered a path forward that Alliance bureaucracy could not. Tralanx, she said, stepping closer to the holographic projection. I accept the life bond and formally acknowledge you as life-bound to me. Captain Kiln made a sound of protest, but Aurora continued, her voice strong and certain. And as your life-giver, I make my first request. Save Groundhold and its people from the Void Storm Crystal. By your honor as an Apex, you must protect them. The command center fell silent. Tralanx's compound eyes seemed to glow with an inner light as he regarded Aurora. Then, slowly, deliberately, he placed one massive clawed appendage across his thoracic plating in what she recognized as a gesture of solemn oath. "By Apex honor, it shall be done," he intoned. "The Legion moves at your command. Life-giver." The holographic projection disappeared, and moments later, the tactical displays showed the Apex vessels breaking formation, accelerating toward the incoming crystal with breathtaking speed. "What have you done?" Captain Kiln demanded, rounding on Aurora. "You've just given an Apex Legion free rein in Alliance space." "I've given 3 million people a chance to survive," Aurora replied evenly. "If that requires bending regulations, I'll accept the consequences." Colonel Rogan studied Aurora with an unreadable expression. "It's done now. All we can do is monitor the situation and prepare contingencies." She turned to Commander Bryce. "I want real-time tracking of every Apex vessel. If there's any deviation from the intercept course, I want to know immediately." Commander Bryce nodded, then addressed Aurora directly. "Dr. Vale, you and Dr. Marsh should prepare for possible deployment to an observation post. If this operation succeeds, your insights into Apex behavior and tactics could be invaluable." Aurora nodded, relieved to have a constructive role rather than being sidelined. As she and Elena left the command center, she could feel Captain Kiln's hard gaze following her. "You've made a powerful enemy," Elena murmured as they headed toward the preparation area. "I've made a choice," Aurora replied. "The only one I could live with." The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation, tension, and cautious hope. Aurora and Elena, along with a small team of specialists, were deployed to Forward Observation Post Theta, positioned to monitor both the approaching crystal and the Apex Legion's operations. From this vantage point, Aurora watched in fascination as the Apex vessels executed a hunting strategy unlike anything in Alliance tactical manuals. Rather than approaching the crystal directly, they moved in a complex, spiraling pattern. Some vessels accelerating ahead, while others maintained position in what appeared to be a carefully calibrated gravitational web. "They're herding it," Aurora realized, studying the tactical display. "Like predators guiding prey into a trap." Dr. Elena Marsh nodded, her expression a mixture of scientific fascination and awe. "Their approach is completely different from our linear, force-based methods. They're using minimal energy to achieve maximum effect, working with the crystal's natural momentum rather than fighting against it." The observation post's communication system chimed, and Commander Bryce's holographic form appeared. "Dr. Vale, Colonel Rogan requests your presence at the Emergency Command Center on ground hold. A diplomatic situation is developing." Aurora exchanged a concerned glance with Elena. "What kind of diplomatic situation?" "The colony administration is questioning the presence of Apex vessels in their space," Commander Bryce explained. "They're demanding Alliance assurances that this isn't some form of invasion disguised as assistance." "That's absurd," Aurora protested. "The Apex Legion is literally saving their colony." "Fear isn't always rational, Doctor," Commander Bryce replied grimly, "especially when it involves a species that, until recently, was our most feared enemy. Colonel Rogan believes your unique relationship with the Apex might help calm the situation." Aurora nodded her understanding. "I'll depart immediately." The journey to ground hold took only a few hours in the high-speed shuttle, but Aurora could feel the tension mounting with every passing minute. The Voidstorm crystal was now visible in the colony's sky, a shimmering, almost translucent mass that distorted the light around it, creating an eerie aurora effect across the upper atmosphere. The Emergency Command Center was located in the colony's central administration building, a solid structure of stone and alloy designed to withstand most natural disasters. When Aurora arrived, she found Colonel Rogan engaged in tense negotiations with Governor Lassiter, the colony's elected leader. "Dr. Vale," Colonel Rogan acknowledged her arrival with evident relief. "Perhaps you can help explain the situation to Governor Lassiter." The governor, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and the weathered complexion of someone who had spent decades under alien suns, regarded Aurora with suspicious eyes. "So you're the one who's supposedly controlling these predators?" Aurora maintained a professional demeanor, despite the governor's hostile tone. "I wouldn't say controlling, Governor. The Apex Legion has offered their assistance based on a cultural obligation they call a life bond. They're here to help prevent a catastrophe." "By bringing their battle fleet into my colony's orbit?" Lassiter retorted. "How convenient for them." "Their vessels are positioned to intercept and divert the Voidstorm crystal," Aurora explained patiently. "Without their intervention, Groundhold would suffer devastating damage, possibly complete destruction." "So they claim," the governor said skeptically. "But we only have their word on that, don't we? Perhaps this crystal isn't as dangerous as they've led you to believe. Perhaps this is all an elaborate ruse to establish a foothold in our territory." Before Aurora could respond, Captain Kiln strode into the command center, his expression grim. "Governor Lassiter, Colonel Rogan," he acknowledged curtly. "I've just received communication from Alliance High Command. They're demanding an immediate cessation of Apex military operations in Groundhold space." Aurora felt a chill run through her. "But the crystal—" "High Command believes we can handle the situation with our own resources." Kiln cut her off. "They're sending a task force, but it won't arrive for another 36 hours. "That will be too late," Aurora protested. "The crystal will impact in less than 24 hours. "Then we'll evacuate as many as we can," Kiln replied coldly. "But we will not compromise Alliance security by allowing an Apex Legion free rein in our territory." Colonel Rogan's expression was troubled. "Captain, I understand High Command's concerns, but the projections are clear. Even with maximum evacuation efforts, we're looking at casualties in the millions." "I am aware of the projections, Colonel," Kiln replied stiffly. "But my orders are explicit. The Apex vessels must withdraw immediately." Aurora felt a surge of frustration and anger. Politics and fear were overriding the simple imperative to save lives. She stepped forward, facing Captain Kiln directly. "I won't give that order," she said firmly. Kiln's eyes narrowed. "You don't have a choice, Dr. Vale. This isn't a scientific expedition or a personal crusade. This is Alliance security, and you will comply with High Command's directives." "Or what?" Aurora challenged. "You'll arrest me while millions die? Is that the Alliance you fought to protect, Captain?" A tense silence fell over the command center. Governor Lassiter looked between them, her earlier hostility giving way to confusion and concern. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "Will that crystal really destroy my colony?" Colonel Rogan nodded gravely. "The projections are clear, Governor. Without intervention, the crystal will strike Groundhold with force equivalent to several hundred nuclear detonations. No evacuation plan could possibly save everyone in time." The governor's face paled. "And these Apex, they can prevent this?" "They're our best hope," Aurora confirmed. "Their ships are already in position, executing a diversion strategy that our own experts have verified as viable." Governor Lassiter studied Aurora for a long moment, then turned to Captain Kiln. "Captain, as the elected leader of Groundhold, I formally request the continuation of the Apex intervention operation. My people's lives take precedence over political considerations." Kiln's jaw tightened. "Governor, with all due respect, you don't have the authority to countermand Alliance High Command." "Perhaps not," Colonel Rogan interjected smoothly. "But I do have the authority to interpret those commands in light of the immediate tactical situation." She straightened, every inch the senior Alliance officer. "As the ranking military representative in this sector, I am authorizing the continued operation of the Apex Legion under the framework of the Emergency Mutual Aid Provision in Section 12 of the Alliance Charter." Captain Kiln looked as though he might protest further, but something in Colonel Rogan's steady gaze made him reconsider. He offered a stiff nod instead. Noted, Colonel. I'll update High Command accordingly. As Kiln strode from the command center, Aurora felt a momentary relief, quickly replaced by renewed urgency. We need to coordinate with Tralanx, she said. The final phase of their diversion strategy will be the most critical. Colonel Rogan nodded. Establish communication with the Apex command vessel. Let's finish what we started. The communication link with Tralanx's vessel established quickly. The massive Predator's image filling the holographic projector. Aurora noticed immediately that something had changed. His exoskeletal armor bore new markings, glowing with an energy signature that the scanners couldn't quite identify. Life Giver, Tralanx acknowledged her. The hunt progresses as planned. The shard responds to our guidance. Aurora studied the tactical display, where the crystal's trajectory showed a subtle but significant deviation from its original course. Your strategy is working, Tralanx. The crystal's path is shifting. But not enough, Tralanx replied, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with what Aurora was beginning to recognize as intensity. The final phase requires precision beyond standard hunting techniques. We must execute the Apex convergence. What does that entail? Colonel Rogan asked. Tralanx's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Our vessels will form a gravitational lattice, focusing their combined propulsion systems to create a singular push at the crystal's weakest point. It is a technique reserved for the most challenging prey. And the risks? Aurora pressed, sensing something unspoken in the Predator's explanation. The vessels nearest the shard will likely sustain significant damage, Tralanx admitted. Some may not survive the convergence. Aurora felt her heart sink. Tralanx, I can't ask your Legion to sacrifice themselves. You do not ask, Life Giver, the massive Predator replied with surprising gentleness. We offer, as is our way. The life bond demands no less. Governor Lassiter stepped forward, addressing Tralanx directly for the first time. Why? Why risk your lives for a human colony? We've been enemies for generations. Tralanx's compound eyes fixed on the governor, studying her with alien intensity. Because she asked nothing when she could have demanded everything, he said simply, gesturing toward Aurora. Such nobility must be honored, even at great cost. This is the way of the Legion. The governor fell silent, seemingly at a loss for words in the face of such an alien yet profound sense of honor. Aurora moved closer to the holographic projection, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down upon her. Is there no alternative strategy? One that doesn't require such sacrifice? Tralanx considered this. There is one possibility. If your vessels could provide gravitational support at these coordinates, a series of spatial designations appeared on the tactical display. We could modify the convergence pattern to distribute the force more evenly. Colonel Rogan studied the coordinates. That would place Alliance vessels in extremely close proximity to the crystal. The risk would be substantial. But shared, Tralanx noted, as is proper between allies. The word allies hung in the air, laden with implications that extended far beyond the immediate crisis. Aurora glanced at Colonel Rogan, who nodded almost imperceptibly. We'll provide the support vessels, the colonel confirmed. Coordinate with our tactical officer to synchronize the approach. As the command center erupted into activity, Aurora remained near the holographic projection, studying the massive Predator who had, through a chance encounter, become bound to her in ways neither of them could have anticipated. Thank you, Tralanx, she said quietly, for everything you're doing. The first claw of the Apex Legion regarded her with his alien eyes. The thanks is mine. Life Giver, through you, the Legion has found a purpose beyond the hunt. We have found connection. Something shifted in Aurora's understanding. A revelation that perhaps the life bond meant as much to Tralanx and his Legion as it did to her. Perhaps in their predatory existence, such bonds of obligation and honor were the closest thing they had to what humans would call friendship or alliance. We'll finish this together, she promised. The final hours before the convergence were a whirlwind of preparation and coordination. Alliance vessels moved into position alongside their apex counterparts, creating a complex gravitational web that would, if successful, push the Voidstorm crystal onto a harmless trajectory that would carry it safely past groundhold. Aurora found herself at the heart of this unprecedented cooperation, translating between Alliance tactical officers and Apex commanders, bridging the gap between two radically different approaches to space warfare, where Alliance tactics relied on brute force and technological superiority. The Apex employed subtlety and predatory instinct, treating the crystal as prey to be herded rather than an object to be moved. As the moment of convergence approached, Aurora joined Colonel Rogan and Governor Lassiter in the colony's observation dome, a massive, transparent structure that offered an unobstructed view of the sky above. The crystal was now clearly visible, a shimmering, distorted section of space that seemed to bend light around it. "It's beautiful, in a terrifying way," Governor Lassiter murmured, her earlier hostility completely gone. Aurora nodded. "Many dangerous things are." Their conversation was interrupted by a priority communication. Captain Kiln's holographic form appeared, his expression grave. "Colonel Rogan, we have a situation. Alliance High Command has dispatched a strike force to neutralize the Apex threat. They're approaching from the galactic north. ETA 17 minutes. Colonel Rogan's expression hardened. "That's exactly when the convergence is scheduled to begin, if they interfere with the operation now." "The crystal will strike groundhold," Aurora finished, horror washing over her. "Millions will die." "Can you delay them?" Governor Lassiter asked urgently. Captain Kiln shook his head. "They're operating under emergency protocols. They won't acknowledge my communication attempts." Aurora felt a moment of despair, followed by sudden determination. "Then we need to execute the convergence immediately, before they arrive." "The Apex vessels aren't in optimal position yet," Kiln objected. "The success probability drops significantly if we rush the operation." "It's our only choice," Aurora insisted. "Better a difficult attempt than no attempt at all." Colonel Rogan studied the tactical display, then nodded decisively. "Captain Kiln, order all Alliance vessels to accelerate their positioning schedule. We'll execute the convergence in 10 minutes. "And the Apex?" Kiln asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. "I'll speak with Trelanx," Aurora said firmly. The communication with the Apex command vessel established quickly. Trelanx listened to Aurora's explanation of the situation, his alien features unreadable to most humans. But Aurora had spent enough time studying his subtle expressions to recognize concern. "An accelerated convergence increases risk significantly," the Predator noted. "Many vessels may be lost." "I know," Aurora acknowledged, the weight of the decision heavy upon her. "But if we wait, your entire legion could be attacked by the incoming Alliance forces. We'd lose any chance of diverting the crystal." Trelanx was silent for a moment, his compound eyes fixed on Aurora. "You wish to protect my legion," he observed, a note of surprise in his resonant voice. "Of course I do," Aurora replied without hesitation. "You're risking everything to save groundhold. I won't let you be attacked for your courage." Something shifted in the Predator's posture, a subtle straightening that Aurora had come to recognize as determination. "Then we hunt now," he declared. "The Legion moves at your command. Life Giver." The next minutes passed in a blur of activity. Alliance and Apex vessels maneuvered into their final positions, forming a complex three-dimensional pattern around the approaching crystal. From the observation dome, Aurora could see the distant flares of propulsion systems igniting, creating a web of light against the darkness of space. "Convergence in 1 minute," the tactical officer announced. "All vessels report ready status." Governor Lassiter moved to stand beside Aurora, her weathered face solemn. "Whatever happens next," she said quietly, "Groundhold owes you, and them, a debt we can never repay. Aurora nodded, her attention fixed on the tactical display where Alliance and Apex ships were represented by glowing indicators, positioned in perfect formation around the crystal. In that moment, the differences between the two forces seemed to vanish, replaced by a singular purpose that transcended species and history. Convergence in 10 seconds. The tactical officer counted down. 9, 8. Aurora found herself holding her breath, acutely aware that millions of lives hung in the balance. 3, 2, 1. Convergence initiated. A blinding flash of energy erupted in the sky as dozens of vessels simultaneously activated their propulsion systems at maximum output, creating a focused gravitational wave that slammed into the void storm crystal. The crystal's surface rippled like water, struck by a stone, fracturing into 1,000 glittering shards that scattered the light of the distant sun. For one terrible moment, it seemed as though the crystal might shatter completely, raining destruction down upon Groundhold. Then, gradually, its momentum shifted, its trajectory bending away from the colony in a graceful arc that would carry it safely into the void. A cheer erupted in the observation dome, scientists and officials embracing in relief and jubilation. But Aurora's attention remained fixed on the tactical display, where several indicators, both Alliance and Apex, had gone dark. "Damage report," Colonel Rogan demanded, her voice cutting through the celebration. 3 Alliance vessels reporting critical damage, the tactical officer replied. 7 Apex vessels non-responsive. Search and rescue operations are underway. Aurora felt a cold dread seize her. "Trailanx, the command vessel." The tactical officer checked his display. "Command vessel sustained significant damage but remains operational. We're establishing communication now." The holographic projector flickered, and Trailanx appeared, his massive form partially illuminated by emergency lighting. Portions of his exoskeletal armor scorched and cracked. Behind him, other predators moved purposefully, attending to damage control. "Life-giver," he acknowledged Aurora, his voice steady despite the evident damage to his vessel. "The hunt is successful. The shard is diverted." Relief washed over Aurora. "Your legion saved millions of lives today. Trailanx, at great cost to yourselves." "A worthy exchange," the Predator replied simply. "The life bond is honored by such purpose." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent notification. "Alliance strike force entering the system," the tactical officer announced tensely. "They're charging weapon systems." Colonel Rogan stepped forward. "Open a priority channel to the Strike Force Command. Authentication, Rogan Alpha 79. The holographic display split, showing both Trailanx and a stern-faced Alliance admiral. "Colonel Rogan," the admiral acknowledged curtly. "You are ordered to stand down and withdraw all personnel from the Apex vessels immediately. We will handle the situation from here." "With respect, Admiral," Colonel Rogan replied, her voice calm but firm. "The situation has already been handled. The Voidstorm crystal has been successfully diverted from Groundhold, thanks to the combined efforts of Alliance forces and the Apex Legion." The Admiral's expression darkened. "Combined efforts? Colonel, have you lost your mind? These are Apex predators, the same species that devastated 3 Alliance colonies during the war. And today, they saved one," Aurora interjected, stepping into view of the holographic pickup. "At great cost to themselves." The Admiral's attention shifted to her. "Dr. Vale, I presume, the one who's been encouraging this fraternization." "I've been facilitating cooperation that saved 3 million lives," Aurora corrected firmly. "The Apex Legion responded to a natural disaster that threatened Alliance citizens, asking nothing in return." "They're predators," the Admiral insisted. "Whatever game they're playing." "This is no game, Admiral," Governor Lassiter interrupted, joining the conversation. "As the elected leader of Groundhold, I can attest that without the Apex Legion's intervention, my colony would now be facing complete destruction. They have earned our gratitude, not our suspicion." The Admiral seemed momentarily taken aback by this united front. In the brief silence that followed, Trailanx spoke, his resonant voice carrying a dignity that transcended species differences. "The Legion came at the Life-Giver's call," he said simply. "We hunt as she directs, protect as she values. This is the way of the life bond." The Admiral's expression shifted from hostility to confusion. "Life bond? What nonsense is this?" "Not nonsense, Admiral," Colonel Rogan explained carefully. "A cultural framework that may represent our best opportunity for lasting peace with the apex species. Dr. Vale has inadvertently established a connection that transcends our traditional diplomatic approaches." Aurora could see the Admiral struggling with this concept, his ingrained suspicion warring with the evidence before him. "You expect me to believe that an entire Apex Legion is now, what, taking orders from a human scientist?" "Not orders," Aurora corrected. "Requests, made within the context of mutual respect and recognition. The life bond isn't about domination, it's about balance and honor." The Admiral was silent for a long moment, studying the tactical display where Alliance and Apex vessels were now working together to rescue survivors from damaged ships. Finally, he sighed heavily. "I'll need to consult with High Command," he said reluctantly. "In the meantime, maintain current positions and continue rescue operations. But be warned, any aggressive move by the Apex vessels will be met with immediate and decisive force." As the Admiral's image disappeared from the holographic display, Aurora turned to Trailanx. "Are your people receiving adequate medical assistance?" The massive predator inclined his head. "We attend to our wounded. Your concern is unexpected, but valued." "Perhaps that's a beginning," Aurora suggested, "learning to value what we once feared." Trailanx's compound eyes fixed on her with that now familiar intensity. "Indeed, Life-Giver, a hunt of a different nature, but perhaps the most important one the Legion has ever undertaken." The days following the Crystal's diversion were filled with debriefings, diplomatic negotiations, and heated debates about the future of Alliance-Apex relations. Aurora found herself at the center of it all, explaining and defending the life bond concept to skeptical Alliance officials while simultaneously learning more about Apex culture from Trailanx and his commanders. Captain Kiln, to Aurora's surprise, proved less antagonistic than she had expected. During one particularly tense meeting with Alliance military representatives, he unexpectedly spoke in defense of the Apex intervention. "I've reviewed the tactical data thoroughly," he stated firmly. "There is no question that without the Apex Legion's assistance, Groundhold would have been destroyed. Whatever their motivations, their actions saved millions of Alliance citizens." Colonel Rogan built upon this support, proposing a formal recognition of the life bond as a legitimate diplomatic framework, one that might offer new pathways for cooperation between species that had long viewed each other only as threats. 1 week after the crisis, Aurora stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of Groundhold's Administrative Center, watching as representatives from the Alliance Council presented formal commendations to both human and Apex personnel who had participated in the Crystal's diversion. "For exemplary service in the face of unprecedented danger," the Council representative intoned. "The Alliance hereby presents the Medal of Universal Service to Dr. Aurora Vale, whose courage and vision bridged ancient divides to save countless lives." As Aurora accepted the medal, her gaze found Trailanx standing at the edge of the assembly, a massive, alien presence that somehow no longer seemed threatening. The first claw of the Apex Legion inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement, a gesture of respect that meant more to Aurora than any official recognition. Later, as the formal ceremonies concluded, Aurora found a moment alone with Trelanx in one of the administrative center's observation lounges. The massive predator stood silently beside her, both of them gazing out at the stars. "What will you do now?" Aurora asked finally. "The life bond has been honored. Your debt is paid in full." Trelanx's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "The debt is balanced," he agreed. "But the bond remains, Life-Giver. It is not merely an obligation to be fulfilled and forgotten. It is a connection that endures." Aurora turned to look up at the towering predator. "What does that mean, exactly?" "It means," Trelanx replied, his resonant voice carrying a new note of what might almost be called warmth, "that the Legion remains at your call, should you have need of us again. And it means that perhaps there is more for us to learn from one another." Aurora smiled, feeling a sense of possibility opening before her, a future where ancient enemies might become something new, something neither had imagined possible. "The Alliance is sending a diplomatic mission to the Outer Territories next month," she said. "They've asked me to lead the scientific contingent. We'll be studying ecosystems on worlds that border apex hunting grounds." Trelanx's compound eyes gleamed with interest. "Such territories can be dangerous for the unprepared." "Then perhaps we could use an escort," Aurora suggested. "Someone who understands those dangers. Someone bound by honor rather than politics." The massive predator straightened, his posture conveying what Aurora had learned to recognize as pride. "The First Claw Legion stands ready. Life-Giver Aurora Vale. We will hunt the stars together." As they stood side by side, human and predator, gazing out at the vastness of space, Aurora reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this moment, from a chance encounter on a nameless moon to saving an entire colony. Their paths had become intertwined in ways neither could have predicted. She had asked nothing from the predator she saved. Now the Apex Legion stood ready at her call, not through fear or domination, but through honor and mutual respect. Perhaps that, Aurora thought, was the most valuable discovery of all, that even across the vast gulfs that separated different species, bonds could form that transcended understanding, but not recognition. The hunt, as Trelanx would say, continued. And for the first time in generations, predator and prey moved forward together, bound by something stronger than either had known before.